Alrighty, so I'm Ellen, but I'm like the fun auntie that kids love and my siblings absolutely hate. They fear when I come because I have Play-Doh, I have finger paint, I will bring bubbles, and I will bring slime that will dry to their floorboards in their car. So with that, I lead because I love interaction. If you guys interact with me, and the more that I like to share. This is my passion. It is what I love to discuss and open people's minds to. And so with that, I just want to let you know we're going to move into a short activity. You can shout, you can praise, amen, you can cry, you can snot nose, you can bubble, you can throw a shoe at me, all compliments. I take them all as compliments. Because God is going to do something in this next hour in this room that you may have not encountered before. Because trauma is not a wound solely to the body or the mind, it enters the soul. And to heal the body and the mind, you have to address the soul wound, and the others will follow. So today, I thought I was going to talk about the hard, but I think Lindsay took that hard real quick. So Mr. Webster defines trauma as an event that is deeply distressing, disturbing experience that overwhelms an individual's ability to cope, causing lasting negative effects on mental, emotional, and physical well-being. But ironically, I'm a social worker, and the Psychological Association of America says trauma is an emotional response to a terrible event. That's it. Healing What's Hidden is a book that's written by the founders of Reboot Recovery, and they challenge it to take the definition of trauma as an objective event or an objective identity and make trauma subjective. And what that means is that I cannot define what you experienced as trauma. You cannot define what I experienced as trauma. If I say that what I went through was traumatic to me and affected me, then therefore it's traumatic. And I want to say that to each of you ladies today, that what you feel has been traumatic to you was traumatic. You are valid in what you were feeling, how you responded, how you cope, and the abilities and things that you do not do today because of what you experienced a long time ago or last week. So, Evan and Jenny define it as looking at trauma as a perspective of an experience that creates hidden wounds, resulting in long-lasting, invisible, and often deceptive impacts on emotional, physical, and spiritual well-being. So this definition is going to give us that perspective, as I said, that is not linear. I could go through a tornado and get excited the next time the wind blows and think I'm going on a roller coaster ride. However, my twin went through the tornado, and as the thunder rolls, she's hiding underneath the bed expecting it to fly away and not be in Kansas with Toto anymore. That is how trauma is truly defined. Being subjective means that we can no longer compare it with one another. And I want to say that in the world of women comparing each other to women, and your hair is better than my hair, and my shoes are better than your shoes, and my pants are better than your pants, trauma does not fit in that narrative. It cannot be compared. So right now we're going to do an activity, and I want everyone to stand up. We're going to stand up, and we're going to close our eyes. And I'm going to list various different types of trauma, and when you hear something that you experienced under this new perspective that you felt was traumatic, I want you to sit down. Okay? So I'm going to start with natural disasters. Have you ever survived a flood, a tornado, hurricane? Have you ever been in an ice storm and without, maybe a fire, a wildfire? Those are all traumatic to certain people. The next one, situational accidents, environments. Been in a traumatic car accident? Domestic violence, loss of your home by fire, arson, flood, an eviction, foreclosure, near drowning, near death events, near fatal medical emergencies, walking with a family member that's going through a terminal illness. And a lot of people won't consider that. But there is a thing called medical trauma. And when you have to walk through with loved ones, going through the medical process and learning vocabulary that you never wanted, and then either they are healed or the emergency ends, you have lost all that time and you don't know what to do with the remainder of it. So that is a new situation and a new topic of trauma. Emotional abuse. Were you bullied at school, bullied by your parents? Bullied by teachers, your spouse, your children. Ever have school staff say you won't go nowhere? You won't do anything? You're dumb? That's emotional abuse. What about your siblings? I don't like you. I hate you. Wish you were dead. Physical abuse. Excessive discipline from your parents. And that's your definition of it, not what their generation said it was. Spouse. Physical abuse from your spouse, your grandparents. Even your own children. Even if you considered it normal at the time of raising up, but now realize that it probably was not as normal as it should have been, and it was traumatic. And one of these ways you can see is when a belt snaps. Do you flinch? If you see a bottle of alcohol, do you look for who normally would drink it? Does it remind you of certain people? The next one is sexual abuse. In sexual abuse, we're not just talking about rape and molestation, forced abortions, abortion survivors, those that had an abortion because that's what you were told you had to do, or that's the only way you knew. Mental abuse, whether it is somebody putting you down, saying that you are crazy, whether it's dragging you to a doctor to get a diagnosis, to get more medication, whether it's financial abuse and taking all the money and leaving you with nothing, saying that you can't buy that dress because you don't have the money, or that they are in full control and you cannot leave a situation because you have no access to get out. Spiritual abuse. And this one's hard. But spiritual abuse and spiritual trauma and church hurt is real. It affects the church at a greater casualty than most people understand. And it's the hardest one for me to talk about. The indoctrination of extreme beliefs. Church hurt, that the person you trusted the most sitting next to you, like Peter and John to Jesus, suddenly became Judas and you had nowhere to turn, and the betrayal was bittersweet. The overuse of condemnation to force compliance on indoctrination. And what that looks like, if you don't do this, you're going to go to hell. If you don't do that, you're going to go to hell. I often thought that Jesus was coming back frequently, and he had a handbasket in one hand, and he had an eraser in the other, and I didn't know where I was going when he came back. So I share that because some of us have experienced church hurt and church trauma. Employment abuse in your workforce. Have you ever been condescended, excessively corrected, harassed, told you had no positive reinforcement, that nothing you did was correct? Was it a hostile place that you went to and could not escape because you needed the paycheck? So we have covered sexual abuse, mental abuse, physical abuse, spiritual abuse, financial abuse, natural disasters. And who's still standing? I want all the women to open your eyes and look around. This is a portrayal of everybody has gone through something that you don't know about. And even with your eyes closed, you don't know why they stayed standing or what traumas made those around you sit down. Now, I'd like you guys to, look to your sister to the left and the right. You see, as they present themselves today, you have no idea what they have faced, what wounds they carry, what things they've encountered, what experiences may have molded them into the person they stand before you right now. But now we're all going to stand back up again. And I need everyone to find a buddy, find one sister. Everyone needs a partner. If you don't have a partner, I'm not scared. You can come up here. This is allergies. I'm allergic to Tennessee, and I live in the woods. So, everybody got a partner? All right. Hug each other, and do not stop until I tell you to. Embrace each other. As you hug her, tell her you are not what happened to you. You're not identified by your experience. Sister, I see your external beauty. I want you to see your internal gold currency from God. I'm holding you tangibly to remind you of what a hug from God feels like. At any time that this gets hard today, I will hug you and be a vehicle of God's love for you. Now everyone take a deep breath. If your tears, they can fall, snot can bubble. Jesus, you, can handle it for today. And today you get to be that tangible Jesus. All right, you guys can now let go. Thanks. Do we all feel a little better or a little awkward? It's okay. I'm from a little Pentecostal background, so to me that's love. But what I did in those 30 seconds was raise your dopamine. By raising your dopamine within your brain, because that is felt through hugging, by patting each other, by embracing and making eye contact with each other in a positive way, it lowers your cortisol. That lowers your fight to flight. Most of us that have experienced trauma rise and run in a level of cortisol with those that are in combat, law enforcement, or first responders. And because of that, we do not see our environments in a neutral, safe place. So by doing that activity, I brought your dopamine down and created a safe environment with those women around you. And now you have your tangible Jesus. That creates a level of safety. It creates a level of security. There's 2 doors. You guys can escape at any time. Third, love. Those 3 things, safety, security, love, are the 3 things that every human, child, adult, teenager, even though they deny it, need to wake up and face every day and have. But when we have trauma, it creates a wound in our soul and causes suspicions when those 3 come into play. If I have experienced trauma from a parent of belittling or abuse, my safety, I have to question, are they coming to love me or are they coming to hurt me? And then when they hurt you and then they say, I do it because I love you, now my mind is confused because in love, there shouldn't be pain. If it's a sense of security because they failed to protect you and you were a victim of a different assault or a different abuse, then when they come and say, I love you, but I go get a soda and they're gone for 8 hours and Uncle Bobby comes in and Uncle Bobby does what Uncle Bobby does and then mom leaves, you weren't secure. And now your security when mom goes to get a soda is gone. So in order to fight and flight these contradictions and these automatic responses that our brains develop as early as 6 weeks old, is we have to be able to reestablish this sense of safety, security, and love in our Heavenly Father and within ourselves. And to start with that, you have to have a tangible, visual perspective of Jesus, because that's the next phase that change and can change your life. I was given this quote, and it changed my perspective on how I see trauma, how I see patients that come in as a therapist, and how I see everybody around me. No one escapes the world without scars, not even Jesus. Wait, what do you mean, Ellen? Jesus died, he had no sin. The Bible says he did not sin. It did not say he did not have problems. I personally believe that Jesus was beamed up Scotty and resurrected before he had wife and children. He would have sinned. That's my thought, because I have teenagers, and I don't know how Jesus would have parented teenagers and not sinned. But our Bible tells us that he did walk through life. He buried his father. That's traumatic. That's traumatic to anyone. Even though he knew he was his earthly father, he still buried him in a culture where the father was the main one to provide the support. His best friend died. Lazarus died. While he knew that he was going to resurrect Lazarus and he was going to rise again, he still died, and Jesus still wept at the pain of those that were there that didn't know the miracle was coming, but because of the anguish that his friends were feeling. Jesus denied his mother and brother to the disciples when they came to the church. That had to be traumatic. Even in a decently upbringing, you would think that most people will not deny their parents left and right for a group of strangers. But he had to, because he knew the calling God had on his life. But that doesn't mean it wasn't traumatic. And then the one trauma that we all expect. He lost 3 days. His last 3 days were full of trauma. And I don't know that I can look at the video of the crucifixion and not see trauma. And I never once looked at it that way. I mean, I know it's a horrible way to die, and I know why he did it. But the thing that God showed me one time, and he revealed to me, is that when Jesus resurrected after the crazy trauma that he experienced, he rose with his scars. But my Bible tells me in Philippians in 3:20 that he will take our weak and mortal bodies, change them into glorious bodies like his own. You know what that means? Jesus is the only one that takes his trauma with him. We don't have to. And because of what he did, and him taking his scars to the cross, earning them and doing the death that he had to die, that means that our trauma wounds are soul wounds, and they can heal too, because they will not go with us into heaven. So what is a soul wound? A soul wound is a hidden wound that most of us don't even realize we're carrying. If you have, psychology would say, symptoms of anger, impulsivity, if you have a struggle with depression, getting motivated, there's fruits of the Spirit, and then there's negative fruits of the Spirit. And what's in your roots will determine the fruits that you grow. I want to be a place that my soul wounds will heal and bear fruit of joy. I want to bear fruits. The Bible never says happiness, but I want to bear fruit that reflects my Father of faith, hope, love. And I want to bear that so where others can see it and know that I'm not what I experienced, but I am what God healed me to be. So I'm not going to over-explain everything that I've been through. I've lived some life. At 41 years old, I can tell you, I've been a victim of sexual abuse as early as 6 in my military service in the military overseas. In war, I was also a victim of sexual abuse. I've been married and divorced twice, and the second time wasn't as pretty. I have 3 children, okay? A lot of people will say that disqualifies me. I'm a high school dropout, but I have a master's degree. There's many things that I've gone through that I carry the wounds with me, but they're scars. They are not openly bleeding. They are there to remind me what I overcame, but that does not affect me today. And that's where I want to talk to you guys today and get you to a point that your hidden wounds is like open heart surgery, and that trauma is putting a Band-Aid on an open heart triple bypass, thinking that Band-Aid's going to make you feel better. And unfortunately, it doesn't. Much as a real physical wound will get infected, septic, and turn green and can kill you, a soul wound can do the same. Healing begins when we stop hiding the pain and we start facing it with God. Your trauma is real. Your pain is valid. Healing is possible. There is a point that we have reached in our generation and our time. Medication won't fix it. Therapy can't out-talk it. And we are to a point that the only way to heal the wounds of trauma are through God, through His Word and a relationship with Him. And as a therapist, I would go and I would do Reboot Recovery. It's a 12-week program. And I would teach that with clients for free and never make a dollar, because I know it changes lives. Because if you can heal the soul, you can heal the mind and the body. And medication will just cover it up. And therapy just tells you to create a different behavior. But if the behavior doesn't make sense, you don't know why you do it. You don't know how to fix it in the first place. So, the next part is that God is close to the brokenhearted. In the military, we have this lovely word that says FUBAR, and I can't say what the F is, but use your imagination. It's broken beyond all repair. And when we go through trauma, most people say, hey, I'm just FUBAR'd. I got all these medications. I'm going to therapy. Life is just crap. I don't know why I keep doing the same cycles. I don't know why I keep doing the same behaviors. I don't know why. And it's just so broken. Well, the truth is, they're wounded. They're not destroyed. But the enemy will get in that wound, just like an open heart surgery, and a little mustard seed of doubt and condemnation will turn it septic and infect the whole soul. The condemnation from the enemy can out-chatter the whispers of a God. But who are you going to listen to? If you want to heal from the lie that the enemy is feeding you, turn your ear to the whisper of the God that created you. He knows how to heal your brokenness, your wounds. Because none of us, no matter what you've experienced, you are on this side of the earth, and the next second can begin the healing from those soul wounds of trauma. Trauma marks you, but it doesn't define you. Think for a minute of all the scars you have on your body. Think of how it got there. I have one on my hand. I tried to prove in 5th grade the boys were idiots and I was a girl and I could lift something, and they smashed my hand between choir risers and the door. Gave me a scar. It doesn't hurt. I can look at it, I can laugh and say, yeah, I proved to them I was right. But it doesn't hurt. It's healed. But the body kept score. The body kept a mark. But my mind didn't. My ego didn't. My identity is not related to proving boys wrong. When trauma comes in and the wounded gets infected, it distorts our identity. I want you guys to know that what you experience, no matter what, no matter how heinous it was, if it was at a level of Criminal Minds or Mr. Rogers, it does not define who you are in Christ. And in a moment, any moment that you hear that you're anything but what this book right here tells you, cast it out. Say, devil, I'm not listening to you today. That's not what my Bible said. I don't have time for it. And it's hard. It will take you a lot of time. It's hard in the beginning. It damages your trust, not only within the people around you, not only with those that are above you or supposed to be loving you in that relationship. It damages your trust with yourself. It damages your trust with your own mind. Have you ever sat there and thought of some weird memory from a childhood that you've never remembered before because somebody brought in a chocolate pie and it reminds you of Granny's? You're like, man, I've never thought of Grandma's pie. The body keeps score, and it will be triggered by your smell, your sense of touch, your hearing, all before your ability to go back and recall and bring it back up. But what this does, when it damages your trust, it creates a false belief about God, about yourself, and others. Because when you damage the trust within yourself, it damages the trust that you have with your soul, your spirit, and your body. Because if you can't trust yourself, how are you to trust something that you can't see and trust a God that has more things for you that are not seeable, tangible? And yes, you can have all the faith and the hope in the world, but when it comes down to that dark moment and you're in the bottom of your closet and you're crying out to God saying, "Where are you? Where are you?" Do you trust that He is there? Because there's been moments, and I've seen so many people that say, "I know God's in my closet. I know He's there. He has to be there. They told me He is there." Well, do you have faith that He's there? Do you believe He's really there for you, or do you think He's just there because He's everywhere? Do you believe that He's sitting right here on these steps, and He's holding your hand and going, rubbing your hair and saying, "Ellen, I know, I know." Because another thing someone told me is that while everything surprised you, it did not surprise God. And when you can look at trauma at the fact that it was not a surprise and He already knew that you were going to go to it, you were going to go through it, and then you were going to be empowered to go over it and reach into someone behind you and say, "Girl, get up, let's go. It sucks. I can't fix it. But look, there's someone behind you that's coming. They're going to need your faith to get up out of that. They're going to need your faith that said, "Hey, look, I was molested at 6 and I can't even be married again because I was unfaithful and I had sex before marriage and the church says I'm going to hell in a handbasket." And I don't know who's carrying the handbasket. I think it's mama. But all of these identities are running in your head and none of them are true. But I need someone that went one step further that says, "You know what? I'm not that 6-year-old that was molested. I'm not kicked out of heaven, and I'm not riding in a handbasket that's got to be big enough for the whole world to fit in. I'm not that person, that 6-year-old that was unclean like the woman. I wasn't made unclean at 6. But what happened to me at 6 did not surprise God. What it did was give someone else the choice to sin or not sin. And the truth of trauma exists not because bad things happen to good people. The truth of trauma exists because there is sin in the world, and we are a fallen creation. God does not sit there and say, and handpick us all with Job-like stories and say, "Have you found Ellen yet? Why didn't you go send somebody to hurt her at 6 years old and we'll see what she does with her life afterwards?" That's not what God's doing. What God's doing is that man had a choice. He had free will, and he made the choice, and God knew the choice he may have made. He was faced with. But he also knew it wasn't going to kill me. He also knew that I was going to get up one day and be like, "Hey, that sucked." But what that embraced and what that created was a wound that when it happened again when I was 20 downrange, and I didn't even remember it happened at 6, the body kept score and split the brain and does all this crazy scientific stuff that I just want to sit on God's lap and be like, "How'd you do that? How did you curate the neuroscience of the brain to protect it from trauma so it doesn't self-destruct?" But He protected me at 6. That memory didn't even come forward and become even present in my mind until I was 35. I forgot that trauma existed. Because what happened at 20 was so heinous and so brutal, it went over that. But God knew what I would face at 20. He knew what that man was going to do with me because the world is fallen. That man was fallen. I don't get to sit there and be like, "Why me, God? Why me?" And for a long time, I carried that with this rucksack of, I need to carry my trauma because it's my cross, because that's what people say of, bad things happen to you and you got to carry it. No, I'm telling you women today, and I want to give you an opportunity because there was a whole plot twist to what God did to me while I was sitting over there. The trauma that you carry today, I don't want you to carry out of here. I want you to realize that Jesus is the only one that takes his trauma and carried it to the cross, and he carried it back when he was resurrected. But we don't have to. He was not surprised by what you went through. He's not surprised by the healing that you're going to encounter. And he's even more excited about when you are healed, how you will reach back to someone that may be one step behind you and say, come on, girl, I got you. It sucks. It's ugly. Life is messy. Okay. She's my seizure alert dog, so you're good. If they're having a seizure, we probably got bigger problems. But God has sat there and he's told me in more ways than one when I've cried on the floor, and I can tell you specifically how he healed me from the soul wound of what happened to me when I was 20. And then my husband walked out. I can tell you I went through 18 months of Job. A Job like hell. And I've always condemned and made fun of the nagging wife, but I realized when my husband left me, he never signed up to be the Job wife. And Job's wife never signed up to be tested. Because when God said, go and find my servant Job and test him, the wife was never mentioned. And I say that because in 2020, we all hit a pandemic. If you survive that, that's trauma when you can't leave your house and you can't get away from kids. And I had 5 of them at home. And so the pandemic hits, and I work for DCS, so I didn't get a stay-at-home blessing. Whoever has children ministry, that's your calling. It is not mine. But I didn't get to stay home, but it was traumatic. I buried 21 people in 18 months. 6 days apart, my parents died from COVID. We went on a dream vacation. I took them to the ocean, took them to Florida. We made all these great memories, and they took a detour. And that detour, the family they met up with all had COVID, and it cost them their lives. So 6 days, for 24 days, it's a medical trauma of you might have to unplug them, but you got to unplug one before the other, but you really have to unplug this one because they didn't have a will and all the legal stuff. And so it's like, well, for the best case scenario, this one has to be unplugged versus this one. And then you got to hope that this one survives 72 hours after you unplug this one. Otherwise, all this is null and void. And here I am at 35 saying, how do you make this decision? Meanwhile, I got 5 kids. I'm working a full-time job. I decided to go on grad school at the exact same time, internship. 4 months before this, my nephew drowned in the ocean in Texas. Went on family vacation. Jumped out of the car. Mom didn't even park it. Jumped out of the car, ran into the ocean, jumped off a jetty, swept out, was gone. So I'm carrying on through the 21 deaths of COVID. Now my nephew drowns. I have a few more deaths of the 21 of grandparents. They're gone. Now both my parents are gone in 6 days, and now I'm an orphan. And I'm still in grad school, and I'm still parenting 5 kids, not really well, but I'm parenting them. And I'm going through, God, what more? What more, God, can you do or take from me? I didn't ask to be Job. I didn't want to be Job. I have faith, but I don't have Job-like faith, and I don't want to establish it now. And I go through, and then my sister, the one that lost her son, someone burned her house down, and then she had nowhere to go with her kids, and then someone stole her car at a birthday party. And so I, as a social worker, I bring them in against all better judgment. But I bring them into my house, and it only created more chaos. But in these 18 months, I just sat there in my prayer closet like, why, God? Why? Why are they dying left and right? Why did you take my parents 6 days apart when we had this amazing vacation? Like, how did you orphan me in the middle of this with my siblings, but they didn't have anything figured out, and there was more stress. And how do you make the decision of who to unplug? And then I have a medical background, so I'm watching them slowly put Mom to sleep with more medication because she was fighting. And then that hope, I laid across my daddy's tomb, and I was like, get up, Lazarus, like, we got to go preach. And I was heck bent that he was going to do it. But in those 18 months, I felt like I didn't ask to be Job, but it built this soul wound that was so deep. A heart, I prayed and listened to a Garth Brooks song called Cold, and I wanted a cold heart. I didn't want to feel anything, because if I felt nothing, then I wouldn't feel the pain of what I was experiencing if I felt nothing, and I just went a cold heart. Well, 6 months after my parents died, my husband, which was probably a good choice, decided he was over the Job season, and he left. I went to put a tombstone on my parents' grave, and I get a call, hey, I moved out, moved all my stuff, I'm done, I'm over it. Don't ask me no questions, I won't tell you no lies, I'm not coming back. So I'm like, I just wanted to put a stone in the dirt. So I get in my car because he had my baby, and you know that mama bear of, look, you can take all of it, you can take the house, you can take all of it, do not take my child. And it's just kind of annoying, so like part of me was like, do I really want her? But I knew I wanted her because I love her and she's like a leech, and I just knew I could raise her better. So I fly back from St. Louis, I'm driving crazy, and I get her, pick her up, and she's happy-go-lucky, thinks everything's great. And I get home, and I go to his closet, a southern closet, and his gun safe's gone. And that's when I knew it was real. Because no man's going to move a 300-pound gun safe if it wasn't final. And so I took that closet of the greatest pain because I fell before God and I said, I don't want to be Job. I don't want to feel this wound. I don't want to feel the burden of all this pain. There is nothing left in my heart for faith, hope, love, and if I serve you, because all in this, I was leading Reboot Recovery. I was leading the Connect group. I was on the prayer team. I was on the counseling team, walking through my own personal hell, telling other people, it's okay, it'll get better, Jesus loves you. And internally, like, but does it? Does it get better? And I remember I did this 21-day fast that I felt like if I fasted and prayed, that God would bring my husband back to me, that he would restore. I've seen him do it. I've seen him do it. He didn't raise Daddy out of the grave. He didn't make him Lazarus. But I know if I fast, because I'm fluffy, if I give up my food and I get skinny, A, he'll come back, or B, I'll get closer to God, and this will happen. 21 days came, 20 days went, fasted, prayed, and all God showed me what was wrong with me. He took that soul wound that was so deep in a heart that was so infected. And on day 21, I said, bring my husband back to me. And that's not what he did. He gave me a heart transplant. A soul wound that was so infected from the 18 months of piling on trauma, believing that God could take this infected heart, that I killed it. DOA. That heart had nothing left in it. Scarred, battered, torn, and I climbed in my closet, and I just remember falling to my knees, snot nose bubbling, and said, God, I don't want it. I need a new heart. Because I don't want to feel nothing, but what I do know is this one is so wounded and so battered and so bleeding that it can't love anything. I don't love myself. It's hard to love these children because all they have is demands. The man that I promised to love, I still love, but he doesn't love me. And all of this, and I'm just crying out before God. And when I tell you he cracked my chest open and gave me an open heart surgery, like I was sitting there in a hospital surgical room, I felt the cut of the scalpel. And he said, I have to take this one out for you to live. I have to give you a new heart to filter the blood through, because the blood's infected, because you've not taken care of this wound. You have an infection that's going to kill you. Of condemnation and listening to the devil and all of these things. And so I lay there on my floor and I can see he puts that new heart in. I don't know if you know this, but to do heart surgery, you got to crack the ribs. You got to break them all off, saw them off. And so I'm there with no anesthetic because Jesus is funny. And so I'm laying there in the most excruciating pain, physically feeling God cut my chest and break my ribs and pull the sternum plate off. And he's holding this blackened heart like a smoker's lung. There was no beating in it. It had nothing. The blood was thick. It looked like oil. And so I was like, God, what am I doing? He said, I have to give you this new heart, but you have to learn how to use it. And you have to trust me to use it. I said, okay, God. And I laid there, and he put that heart back in my chest, but it didn't start beating because the body became so used to that wound being there, it didn't send the blood there. It rerouted. So he sat there, and I physically felt and watched him massage that heart back into a rhythm. And he had to massage it a long time, and the body was on this bypass. I could hear the beeps of this machine. The blood's rerouting because I'd done too much damage. And he's sitting there, and he gives me this new heart. And when you have open heart surgery, you can't close up. You have to stay open because your body naturally will swell. And so I'm like waking up out of this, what do I do now? There's a bandage over my chest. I can see the heart beating, and I'm thinking, it's done. He restored in me a new heart. Like I could go run a marathon. So I go as naively or dumbly as I could and went back to the husband. I said, I love you. I've done this prayer and fasting. I love you. And he's like, yeah, I think we can give this one more chance. Did I stop and pray? No, I did not. And so I go to lunch with him, and then things blow up, and it was just a whole mess. And I went back to God, and I said, how did you give me a new heart? And it doesn't work. I'm hurt again and deeper. And he said, because you didn't ask me to love him. I gave you a new heart, but you went out to do the old things. And now you got an infection in your new heart from the old heart because you didn't listen. You didn't walk through the healing. You just wanted to speed right through it. And so as I came back, and I was like, okay, God, what do we have to do? Like, I done messed it up. And I'm telling you this because I know the pain that open heart surgery caused, but I know that I have healed from so much trauma after that open heart surgery and falling to my knees and telling my Heavenly Father, I don't want to be angry. I don't want to be depressed. I don't want to be medicated. I want to love my child as annoying as she could be. I want to forgive my husband who left, who abandoned me. And then when you, in a marriage or an orphan, get abandoned, it only consecrates what you believed all your life. And so I go and I have this new heart. And as I've gone through ministry and I continue to go through, guess what? Life still happens. Trauma still happens. How I respond now is not how I responded then. And my life now is not how it was then. But I say all this to tell you that today I'm going to have him play a video of Jesus' trauma at the cross. And if you have a piece of paper, I want you to write down your trauma. And just as I laid in that floor and I knelt in that closet and was like, God, just meet me here. Meet me right here in this carpet. I need you. I cannot do this. He can meet you here. And you can walk out that door. And you don't need the soul wounds of trauma to go with you. You can leave here with the very same heart transplant, hopefully less painful, that I left with, because Jesus is the only one that walked into heaven with scars, and none of you are intended to carry them with you, and he can heal them.